It is my privilege to introduce my friend Julaine, who we've walked through a lot of life together over many years. And I've watched her vision for what she's doing now develop from really back at the beginning of our friendship. She was with AT&T Wireless as a broadband were you CFO, yeah. And I saw the redirect out of that into nothing, basically, for way longer than she imagined it would be. And gradually, she began to have a message on her heart that it is a great thing to make money for the right purposes. And that is one thing that I have loved about her, because I look at our country and I think we've had so much anti-capitalism sentiment. And a lot of that is because we've lost the foundation of what capitalism does for good. And so she's an author. She's written a book, Loving God and Making Money, and has had a radio show on that same topic with really interesting guest speakers. So, Julaine, we're just delighted you're here with us today and eager to hear from you.
It's really a privilege, and I'm grateful to be able to share a little bit of my story. And Pat has done a great job introducing my journey. And I feel like I've grown up. I'll just put it like that. I feel like I've grown up. And what I'm hopeful is that through my journey of transformation, of thinking about the purpose for business, the purpose for money, that I can now impart some key learnings to the rest of those of us who are leaders, who are ambitious, who have a desire to prosper in the world. And these key learnings are really pretty much centered around this question of purpose, you know. And as we discussed at our tables this morning, you know, everyone wants to live life to the fullest. I mean, I don't think you ask any person on the face of this earth, what does that look like for them? And they don't have some idea pop into their mind about living life to the fullest. We want to live life to the fullest. We're born that way. And the good news about those of us who live in America and who enjoy the freedoms that we have here is that we can explore the answer to that question pretty much. You know, we're pretty much only limited by our own imagination, right? There is really nothing in terms of a structure of our culture or anything that would prohibit us from exploring. What does it look like for me to live life to the fullest? So when I was in my young 20s, when I thought about that question, pretty much these three things came to mind. I wanted to make some money, right? And for me, that really was just going to facilitate the process of independence. Growing up in a household where my father was the main breadwinner, and he had four children, I have 3 siblings, and whenever we would need something, we would go to the courtroom of my dad. You know, he was the one who had the checkbook and the purse strings, etc. And if you wanted something, you had to plead your case. And I, as a really young child, just grew up going, I don't like this system, and I would rather have my own. And so it just kind of birthed a seed in me that says, you make your own money, you won't have to ask anybody for anything, right? You can go and get what you want when you want it. So that became very important to me. The other thing that was also central to my mind was power. And for me, power really was a sense of authority in a workplace kind of sense. I like to be the boss. So I was always the kind of child also growing up who felt like I can impart knowledge to others, and for me to be able to do that and influence the lives of other people was really fulfilling. And so for me, when I thought about living life to the fullest as a leader, I would be probably, you may not be able to see that, but that box at the top says me. That's me. Okay, so that was kind of like my source of ambition. And then the last area was recognition. Recognition, that need to have a sense of belongingness and to get love back from people, you know. Well done, well done. And I think part of that was also birthed from the fact that growing up in a very musically talented family, starting to play piano at the age of 4, going to recitals every year, and demonstrating your talent to others. And if you did well, and truthfully, if you didn't do well, you know, always that sense of applause that would come. And I just loved, you know, that sense of, oh my God, you know, they see me. We don't like to be invisible in the world, do we? We want to be seen. So these 3 things really were key motivators for most of my early career life. You know, I became a CPA after initially thinking I would be a doctor. And why did I want to become a doctor? Money, power, recognition. You know, I mean, who doesn't have that? If you got MD, PhD behind your name, you usually get a little bit of those other things as well. And so without understanding that you actually had to practice in medicine in order to have an MD behind your name, it wasn't just something that was a placard on the wall. I decided I wanted to be a doctor, but that didn't work out. And biggest clue that I wasn't really fit to be a doctor was when I was a junior at UC Davis studying animal physiology, and we had labs that we had to do. And we actually did labs on live animals at that level, and you got to be an upperclassman. And so we had a little surgery team. You have a surgeon, an anesthesiologist, an assistant surgeon, and a recorder. And we were in lab, and it was the experiment where we were going to do some dissecting of a rabbit. And it was actually an experiment. So the rabbit wasn't dead, the rabbit was alive. And the rabbit's physiology is very akin to human physiology, very, very sensitive system. And so in all the classes leading up to this experiment, the professor was very, very adamant. Pay attention to your rabbit, because your rabbit will die on you in a second if you don't pay attention to the rabbit. And the anesthesiologist's role in this experiment is extremely important. And guess who was the anesthesiologist? Moi. And my best girlfriend was the surgeon. So here we are in this lab. She's cutting open after I put him under, gave him some sodium pentothal and put him to sleep, and I'm watching his heart rate and his respiration and everything. And then my girlfriend got in trouble in the experiment. Not trouble, but things weren't going as well, and she was having a little difficulty, so I took my focus away from the monitors for the little rabbit, and I was looking at Lisa, and I'm trying to help her get what she was doing done, and before I knew it, my rabbit was dead. Only team in the entire class whose rabbit died. Was God speaking to me or what? You know, it's like, maybe you weren't cut out to operate on people or animals or anything else. The fact of the matter was, I realized I didn't enjoy doing that kind of work. And so I realized that while I had decided what would result in me living life to the fullest, I ended up in this place called this trap. The trap was not really liking where I had landed after I had pursued what I thought would give me fulfillment. Now that happened when I was studying, and eventually I was able to turn that corner. I went back to school. I became an accountant. I love being an accountant. I love what I do. I'm a certified public accountant. I have my own accounting practice right now. I'm living life to the fullest as far as my career is concerned. But as Pat mentioned, back in early 2000 when I was working for AT&T, I found myself again in this trap, and it was a different trap this time. It wasn't because I was doing something that I didn't enjoy doing or doing something that I wasn't cut out to do, but I had not really fully understood the purpose for what I was doing. And because those 3 baseline motivators were still key in my life, money, power, and recognition, I got to a place in my career where other things that were important in my life were kind of being set aside. You can be engaged as a leader, doing what you enjoy at work, and yet you can have this empty feeling inside. Like, what am I really doing? And I found myself in that situation, and I knew that the emptiness was related to my family and my relationships with my family. And that became highlighted when we moved here, because I moved here with my husband and my son to take on that role as CFO, division CFO for AT&T Broadband, which was TCI. I'm a cable girl. So Comcast Xfinity today. Well, when I came the CFO up here, they were TCI. So that's the connection. And so I knew that I had this strong family system support in California before we moved up here. And then we moved up here with just the three of us. And all of a sudden, the needs of family got highlighted, because my mom and dad were no longer there to pick up the slack, and I had a young son at home. And so this is where this feeling of entrapment showed up, and I realized that if I was really going to ever find my happy place, my sweet spot, that place of life's fulfillment for me, I could no longer just look at money, power, and recognition. In fact, there were some other things that I really cared deeply about, and I needed to pay attention to those as well. And part of my value system, a huge part of my value system, is based upon my faith. It's based upon who I believe I am, and it's based upon my understanding of who God is. And yet none of that was really on the table when it came to how I spent most of my time. It was just working, right? And so I realized that if I was really going to find fulfillment, I need to find it as a woman, I needed to find it as a mother, and I needed to find it as a wife. And if I didn't figure out how to make all three of those things happen, I was not going to be able to live life to the fullest. So this morning, I asked you to consider, through the question that Jeff asked, what does living life to the fullest look like for you? And really another way of asking this question is to say, what's your life's purpose? Because when we understand what our life's purpose is, guess what? If we pursue that, we will live life to the fullest, because we're going to be engaged in doing that which we were born to do. And the reflection of that, it could be in different contexts. Because guess what? We're not a one-trick pony. We wear multi-hats, right? And if you don't pay attention to all of your hats, then you're going to miss something. And when you understand your life's purpose, guess what? It reflects on all aspects of who you are, right? So what I realize is that if we really want to live life to the fullest, we need to know the answer to this question. What's our life's purpose? And it could be, like I said, many different things. And I thought about this in the context of business. When we as individuals start companies, we always think about company purpose, company vision, company mission, right? And we think about it in the context of serving our products or our services to the target audience that we are going to serve. But the fact of the matter is that just like with us individually, that we have a life's purpose, that if we understand what it is, we can live life to the fullest. Well, the same is true with business. Do you know that the original purpose for business is at a foundation, spiritually speaking, that's deeper than any product or service you would ever sell or deliver to someone else? A lot of times people think, my purpose of my business is to sell software, to sell widgets or whatever. They're talking about what the company does. But the purpose of business is always rooted in who the business is. And that goes back to the business CEO founder. So it goes back to us as individuals. And the original purpose of business, and every business, is to facilitate the process of uplifting life and building communities and relationships among people through the delivery of goods and services. And why is that the original purpose of business? Because that is our purpose. Our purpose, folks, is always to uplift life, to build relationships and communities among people. It is the same since Adam and Eve. It's the same since Cain slew Abel. It is the same since the beginning of time. We live in community. Why? To uplift life, build relationships among people. And so when I thought about that as a fundamental reason for being as I answered the question about my own personal life, then I realized that if we as leaders can also stop and step away from kind of the traditional frame of reference when answering a question about the purpose for business and started to look about it in a more holistic way, that it might help us to address some of the problems that business can produce in the world. And we've seen evidence of it because of some of the failures of big business that we can connect to consumerism, greed, covetousness. All those are related to a desire for money, power, and recognition. And if you have a group of leaders leading a company who are motivated by a desire for money, power, and recognition, at some point along the line, the company is going to lose sight of its bigger purpose, and they will focus on what I consider to be the today's purpose of business. We need to make a profit, we need to deliver returns on investments, and we need to create wealth. That is our purpose. And then what's on the other side of the equation with regards to the original purpose, which includes uplifting life, strengthening communities, and building and sustaining relationships, diminishes in its focus. Because, let's face it, we can make a profit without uplifting life. Examples of it abound. We can deliver a return on investment and not strengthen the communities that we live in. And we can create wealth and sacrifice relationships in the process. So how is it that we can get back to the original purpose and design for business, which is connected to the original purpose and design for our life, such that the companies that we build are able to avoid the undesirable consequences of capitalism? Those consequences: fraud, greed, deception for the purpose of bottom line profit, broken relationships with spouses and children in exchange for the creation of wealth, our world being polluted and our environment being ravaged by issues of deforestation and things that definitely point to a lack of stewardship of the earth that we inhabit. But profits are being made. And, of course, the human condition of life, which I tell you, there is enough wealth in the world that if we were able to understand the original purpose for our life and connect that to the purpose for our companies that we run, and then do something tangible with our understanding, we can actually combat some of these undesired consequences, whether they be personal or whether they be corporate. And so I'd like to present to you today a new idea. And it's a new idea regarding the purpose for business. And it is that we can identify a purpose for business that includes making money. So I'm not talking about not doing that. That's extremely important. But it also yields a depth of fulfillment that money, power, and recognition can't produce. It forestalls the undesirable outcomes, and it promotes wealth creation through socially responsible business practices. I think we can have our cake and eat it too. I think we can do it both. I think that we can build socially responsible businesses that are based upon a foundation of a higher motive for being in business, a higher standard for running the company, and higher uses for business profits. And I call that the SOUL plan. They are strategic objectives for uplifting life, and there are 3 of them. There are 3 objectives, and they are rooted in an understanding of our intrinsic purpose, which we'll talk about, generous leadership, and impact investments. So this is a framework that I produced during a period of time where I was doing nothingness. Total isolation. I decided to quit my job back in 2001 to focus on being a mother and a wife. My son at the time was about 11 years old, 12, about to go into his teenage years, and wisdom spoke to me and said, pour your love into your husband and your home. and learn how to become a praying mother and wife. And I'm like, I'm learning how to run this company called AT&T Broadband, and that doesn't have anything to do with being a mother and a wife. But wisdom said, learn how to be a praying mother and wife. I finally listened to wisdom, not initially wanting to, but eventually desiring to. And I left my job. And I became a stay-at-home mom. And during that period of time, I went into what I consider to be professional irrelevance. Total isolation, no longer understanding who I was because I identified myself with what I did instead of who I am. And it was during that time that I began to ask some questions like the one we asked you to ponder this morning. What does it mean to live life to the fullest? And in the answering of that question, I developed the soul plan. And what I realized is that until I got the answer to this question right, everything else was going to fall apart in my life. And that is, what is my intrinsic purpose? Now, your intrinsic purpose is the divinely ordained reason you were given the gift of life. It's not necessarily your passion, although your passion can influence and give you clues as to what it is. But many times when people ask themselves the question, what's my purpose? They think about, well, what do I like to do? And what do I want to do? And what am I good at? And all those things are great indicators. But let me say this, unless you ask the Creator who you are and why you were given the gift of life, you will not ever tap into your intrinsic purpose because it came from the one who gave you the gift of life. So in order to answer the question, you have to have a way to connect with the one who gave you the gift of life. It's like if an artist creates a portrait and someone asks, can you tell me what that picture means? Only the artist can give you the authentic interpretation because they are the creator. And I challenge you this morning that each of you has the same question to be answered. What is your intrinsic purpose? What is the reason that you were given the divine gift of life? And when we find the answer to that question, it influences everything that we do in life. And when you think about what the answer to that question is, it really is connected to the original gift of who you are. You are a gift. You are a gift to the world. Your life matters. There is something intrinsically inherent in you, your abilities, your talents, your likes, and even your dislikes that the world is waiting to receive. It's God's gift. And we all have that. And our job, folks, is to steward it. Our responsibility is to steward our intrinsic purpose. And when we take on that responsibility, then we become part of the solution to a hurting world. We have an ability to impact upon those things that we were born to affect. And so that's the root of the higher motive for being in business, because once you get that understanding and then you start looking at your company or those you lead in your in the companies that you work for, you see them as the recipient of the gifts that you were born to deliver through your leadership, through your talents, through your skills and your abilities. And it's always with the purpose of uplifting life and building and sustaining relationships in the communities that we live in. And so that becomes the higher motive for being in business, elevated above a desire for bottom line profit, return on investment, creating wealth, etc. And then the second objective of the soul plan is the higher standard for running your business. So this has to do with, how do we lead? When you know you have an intrinsic purpose and your stewardship of that purpose results in you serving it to other people, giving of your gift, you become what I call authentically generous. Your generosity is in your delivery of your talents to those you were called to affect. Your generosity is connected to you knowing that as you give, it will ultimately be given back to you. Now, giving is a strong strategic or tactical weapon in the world of business. If you are in sales or marketing, if you own a company, you know that we give. We give in a way that is strategic because it's always connected to, well, what ultimately will I get back? It may be a customer contract. It may be goodwill in a relationship that eventually leads to a customer contract. There's a connection there, right? Because this principle of give and it shall be given to you is universal, right? It's a truth, and it happens. It's a way that life flows. Now, the only difference between that kind of giving and the giving that I'm talking about when you serve your original purpose to the world is that the reason that you serve your original purpose to the world is not to get something back from people. It's to be a good steward of your purpose, and accountability of stewardship of your purpose is not with us in this room. It's with the one who gave you the purpose to begin with. And so you're motivated to be authentically generous because you will give to others without expecting to get back something from them. Now, wouldn't that be nice to have as a culture in the world of business? That people would actually give without an expectation that there's a quid pro quo in it for them. I think that it would influence the environments in which companies operate when there's elements of giving that include authentic generosity. Now, am I saying that you would never give with an expectation of getting? No, because that is, as I said, a strategical, tactical way to build your bottom line. Giving, everyone loves to receive gifts. So don't leave thinking I'm saying, oh, you're not supposed to use that. If you are building a business, you will have reason to give with potential new customers, etc., your time, whatever. But what I am saying is that you will have a consciousness and an awareness that there will be times where there's an unction, a wooing to give, and you'll go, that doesn't make any sense. That person can't help me. I'm not going to get anything in return from them if I give to them. But yet, there's a wooing that says, you were born for this time and for this purpose, and so you give anyway. That is authentic generosity. And that is connected to an understanding of your intrinsic purpose. And that is what a generous leader does. Now, here are 11 standards of generous leadership, and I won't have time to go through all of them, but I want you to take a look at this list. What are the standards of generous leadership? They build and sustain relationships. It builds partnerships that are rooted in something more than just economics and quid pro quo kinds of scenarios in life. Operation in truth is really just a matter of integrity. So generous leadership requires that you be a person of integrity, that you honor others, you will be one who inspires change, overcomes obstacles, keeps your intrinsic purpose constantly in your view. You think creatively, raise expectations. Business, you are a business risk taker because you cannot be in business successfully without taking risks, and you will have both an interior and what I call spiritual strength that you are able to rely upon. So these are some of the standards of generous leadership. And again, it's related to your understanding of your intrinsic purpose and your desire to serve it to the world. So once you have founded our foundation upon which you build your career and your business or your leadership capacity, that looks like the foundation of intrinsic purpose and understanding of authentic generosity. What do you do with the results? Because everything that I've talked about up to this point focuses on your being, your identity, who I am. And that's going to take you into multiplicity of context. Yeah? But your standards of leadership and your understanding of intrinsic purpose don't change. They don't change with your change in your job role. But what do you do now with this kind of foundation? And one of the things that you will do is thrive in the work that you do. There is no way that you, knowing who you are and what you were born to do and having a mindset to serve that to the world will not thrive in your being. It's like saying a tree can't thrive, an apple tree can't thrive in producing apples. Sure enough, it's thriving. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So we are likened unto that. So you will thrive. So as you thrive, you will bear fruit. There will be fruit born to your life when you operate in that, I call it the sweet spot. Staying in your lane, know your lane, stay in your lane, driving in your lane, you're going to win the race. Eventually, you will bear fruit. So what do you do with that fruit? And that is the third objective of the soul plan. And it is to look for and identify higher uses for business profit. So it's in the context of the business that I'm talking about, and it's the reason why I keep speaking of profits, but you can think of profits as your fruit. Well, the first thing that you will identify is that I have a purpose beyond profit for personal consumption. Why is that? Because the purpose for business, the purpose for our life will always result in us uplifting life. How do you uplift other people's lives? Through service, through being there for them. So now you've got a purpose for bottom line profit that goes beyond return on investment and creating wealth. It's showing up and being the solution and being the answer for a need. That's the purpose beyond profit. Now, can you fulfill that purpose if you don't make profit? No, try it. Don't work. That's why you have to thrive in what it is that you're called to do. So that as you give to others a value proposition that enhances and uplifts life, guess what you get back? You get either money compensation or money in terms of sales, you get back. Why? Because that's the world's way of letting you know we value what it is that you're delivering. Right? So you have profit and now you have a purpose for it beyond your own consumption. Why? Because you are serving your gifts to the world, which means you're showing up to fill a need that somebody else has. Now, you know that you have that purpose beyond profit. That purpose is going to help you to produce what I call shared value. It's both economic and social value for the purpose of uplifting life and building communities and relationships among people. So you are creating economic value, but you're also creating social value because you are connecting with those who you were called to connect with when you were given the gift of life with a purpose. And that will result in you building what I call a socially responsible and generous business. A generous business. And why is that? Because your acts of generosity are going to, like I said earlier, not always look like the normal giving in business. In fact, you might do things like give 10% of your annual income to charities that you care about. Who does that? Who gives 10% of their income? I'm telling you, if you read the reports in the United States, America is known for her giving. We are very generous folks. But when you look at the statistics of the relative amount that we give compared to the size of the pie, it's a lot less than 10%. It's more like 3 to 5%. Okay? So, oh my goodness, what if we, knowing we have a purpose beyond profit, began to be generous in a new kind of way? Meaning that we look for ways that we can impact the lives of others and we put our money where our mouth is to the extent that we give at least 10%. It would change the world because we have a big pie from which that could happen. So these are the kinds of ideas that began to come into my mind as I thought about my own ambition. And I thought about, Julaine, you have always wanted money, power, and recognition. Okay, what I realized and what God helped me to accept is He gave me that desire. So that desire in and of itself is divinely inspired. Now the question was, what are you going to do with it? And I began to look around and see a hurting world. And I began to look around and identify needs. And I saw, oh my God, what a great partnership that would be. If we can create a movement of leaders who understood their intrinsic purpose, and then they had a heart to serve that purpose to the world. There could be solutions brought to this earth that could tackle some of the world's most hurtful issues or problems of pain that our brothers and sisters all over the world and even down the street are dealing with and suffering with. And then all of a sudden, capitalism becomes the solution to the world's problems. And it all starts with knowing who we are So what I'd like to leave with you today is that to the extent the success of your business is not just about making lots of money, to the extent you want to avoid undesirable business outcomes, and to the extent your purpose is to serve others and care for our planet, to the extent your business profits are for a purpose that goes beyond profit, that is the extent to which you will become a generous leader with soul. Thank you so much.